Hello friends and welcome. Today I am sharing with you my favorite method for purifying beef tallow or lard for use in personal hygiene products where you don't want that smell or you don't want little bits of impurities being put on your skin or in your soap. So I'm going to share with you that process. Let's get into it. So I have some tallow here from some beef, and you might have bought this from the store. You can buy that in the store as well. You're still going to want to purify it if you're going to be using this for a balm like I plan to. And you can see I definitely still have some impurities underneath that tallow cap, if you will. After I had cooked down my beef, I had put this fat in the fridge to set, and that's when you get that cap or that tallow cake, if you will. And you're going to want to let that set in the fridge for about 5 hours or so, and so that you can remove the fat from the broth or gelatin portion. So take a sharp knife. I tried using a butter knife and you can see it doesn't really work that well. Use a sharp blade and just skim off the impurities off the very top of that cake. Now, I didn't have a very thick cake here because I only have about a half a cup of tallow here that I'm working with. If you use a little bit more, the cake is thicker, about like an inch thicker. And that makes it a lot easier just to hold the tallow in place without breaking it. So once you've gotten most of the visual impurities scraped off of each piece, you're going to put that in a crock pot or any pot that it will fit with water. And don't forget to keep those little impure scrapings off because that still has tallow in it that you can just use to fry up some eggs really quick. So that doesn't go to waste either. So once you have your pieces of tallow or lard ready to go, put them in your pot on low with some water. Generally speaking, you can have a ratio of 2 to 1 water to fat, but the ratio doesn't really matter so much as long as you have enough water that it can simmer on low for 30 minutes to an hour without completely evaporating. So err on the side of caution here if you're unsure and just do a 2 to 1 ratio. Water to fat, and you should have plenty of water. So in my case, I had about a half a cup of tallow, so I'm adding about a cup of water to this. And then what we're going to use to help draw out the impurities of that tallow is salt. I do about a teaspoon per cup of tallow. So here I added a half a teaspoon because I have a half a cup of tallow. Just a rule of thumb. And you don't have to use salt. You can also use baking soda. That's another one that people have used before with the same results. And this is just to show you, if you're buying tallow in the store, you're probably still going to see some of this residue at the bottom. This is just some that I had rendered that still needs to be purified. This is what we're going to remove, right? You don't want any of those little tiny pieces of impurities going on your skin, or potentially that smell that isn't really bad. It's just probably off-putting if you're putting it on your face or on your skin, right? So here I am just on low, slowly melting this with the water and the salt. And you're going to bring this up to a low simmer. And depending on how big of a batch you're doing, you can simmer it anywhere from 30 minutes, like I did, to an hour. And actually you can go longer if you've got a really big batch. And here I'm just kind of showing you the impurities that are rising to the top. So even though that tallow looked pretty clean when I scraped it all off, you can still see there's going to be little bits of impurities rising to the surface. After your 30 minutes to an hour is up, go ahead and use a fine mesh strainer like I have here, or a cheesecloth would work good as well to strain out the impurities from the tallow and the water. And now this is going to be set in the fridge for at least 4 to 5 hours or overnight, just until that fat cap is completely solid. If you don't wait until it is completely solid, you're just going to mix up that water with the fat all over again, and the impurities are going to get mixed in again, and it's going to be a mess. So you can see here the layers are distinct. This is now having been set in the refrigerator overnight, so you have a very distinct layer of fat on top. And I recommend using a bowl because it makes popping out the fat cap easier. So just off the bat, you can see that that water is very clear, and the back of that fat cap is so much cleaner looking than it did the first time around. This is almost ready to go after just one round of cleaning. And depending on how dirty your water is or your fat cap is, you can keep repeating this process until you don't smell anything, any odor at all, either in the water or on the fat cap itself. So that is how you know that you have refined it or purified it enough for your liking. So if you're using fat from, say, like an organ, like leaf fat, you might find you only have to purify your fat one time and it's ready to be used for your balms or your candles or whatever project it is you're going to be using. Tallow soap is one of my favorites. That's another one that I like to do this process for, because you definitely don't want little bits of impurities getting into your soap and messing up your soap. But as it is, this is just regular tallow, so I did this 2 times and it came out great after that second time. Once you're done purifying, we need to make sure that all of the water is going to be evaporated off of this tallow to make this shelf stable. Pat it dry with a paper towel, then let it air dry at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit or under for a couple of days, and that will evaporate any residual water underneath that fat cap. And now it is ready to be used in all of your products. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I will see you next time.